I'm going to bring the April 22nd Assembly Finance Committee meeting to order. Ms. Wendell, will you note the roll?
Thank you, Chair Wall. We have all Assembly members present in chambers besides Assembly Member Smith, who is absent.
All right, that brings us to agenda topics. Our first is service reduction summary. I will tell you guys just straight up, my intent, obviously, we knew there would be a day where these things were going to end up out there on the table in terms of the things that we are in a position right now to have to consider. And so I know we've gotten lots of emails as we expected, because these are pretty startling to see. But you can't look at our finances and not have to start discussing some of these things. So that's where we're at. My intent today is not that we are voting on any things we like or not like, that we're going to focus our discussion on where we need more information from staff to move forward in this process. At some point, we're going to have to start reducing this list to things that we are really considering. But there's a lot of things on this list. Staff time is limited. And so tonight I'm going to try to help us prioritize where we want them to focus their time. But with that, I'll turn it over to Manager Kester, if there's anything you want to say on the list and the memo that you helpfully provided with the list.
Thank you. I just will add that at each individual one of you has asked different questions about some of your different ideas that may or may not have made it to this list. And I know I had a really good track record before of sharing all that information with the body, but the information has been overwhelming over the last 10 days or so. So I think, as Chair Wall put it, that we have done some of that legwork, as each individually one of you knows. So our intention is to throw together a memo answering the questions and providing additional information on all the items that you request tonight for the next time we talk about this on the 29th. And I think we'll be able to do that. But just know that that's kind of our approach to that information flow, because there's just been a lot of questions.
Ms. Flick, I know you did a lot of the work summarizing this. Anything you want to add before we jump in?
No, just, thank you all for working on a task that's hard and not fun and probably nauseating in the process. I put a memo, I think it's on page 8 in your packet, that kind of outlines how the summary is put together. And so, as you talk through things tonight, that first column on the left, the item number, can help direct your colleagues to where you're trying to speak. The agreement column just represents where multiple members or how many members shared a similar idea. And then where there were very different thoughts about the idea and action potential, I broke those out into lines underneath the larger idea, which ended up being in blueprint. Feel like it's a really busy piece of paper, but I wanted to be able to aggregate things for you, give you both ranges of options where there were members who had small reductions and members that had large reductions, and kind of everything in the middle. So you got an average on the operating cost side. And then some of the ideas are one-time in nature, some are operating. So I also tried to break that out for you. I think, as far as content, as there are questions, we'll record those and work with the manager's office to get those together for you.
All right, coming back to the body, again, my intent is not that we spend a bunch of time, diving deep on any of these, but does the body have questions on what's presented here or anything in the memo that you'd like clarity on before we talk a little bit about where we would like staff to kind of bring us back more information? Ms. Atkinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There was one that was mentioned in the memo, which was the transitioning the criminal prosecution back to the state. And you talk about it deserving a close look, but you kind of only mention the expense side of things. Are there any operational gains that you see with shifting criminal back to the state, or do you see losses there? What kind of impacts would you expect?
So I'm going to just briefly start, but this is really our city attorneys. So I'll start from the kind of manager's office and administration's perspective. This is a service that is provided by the state and everywhere but Anchorage and Juneau. And our citizens decided we want a higher level of service, so we're willing to pay for that. And I just think that we should continue to push back and question on services that are being pushed, state services being pushed onto local government. That's obviously a policy call from your perspective, but you know, $1 million is the cost of operating a pool. That's kind of been my lens as I look at everything. And so it's a significant expenditure. Also, we are required to provide public defender. We are required to provide that as part of this service. And our contract amount for that contract is going up this year in addition to what we have budgeted for. So we will be requesting a manager's amendment to the budget to increase that line item because the bid came back recently and is a couple $100,000 more. It's $150,000 more than what we had budgeted for.
Sorry, before Ms. Wright maybe goes into more detail, I just did want to ask. So maybe I misunderstood. This would be a service reduction, you think? You don't believe the state would, prosecute the same levels or, prosecute anything other than felonies, perhaps?
I really would like Attorney Wright to give you her view of, the services that her department provides in this area.
Thank you. So I will stay higher level, and then you can ask me if you want details about, cases and what we do and what happens. So the city took on prosecutorial work from the state, just like Anchorage did, because we wanted more autonomy. We wanted more decision-making about what happens in our community and how we respond to it. The division of labor made a lot of sense, misdemeanors versus felonies. Anchorage has a model where they're testing kind of a combination of both that we've been keeping an eye on. I agree that it's a policy call for you all to make. There is another entity that does prosecute. The state district attorney's office in Juneau covers all of Southeast, not just Juneau. So they focus on all of the communities they're responsible for prosecutions at that level. I also would say they've gone through massive funding issues of their own the past few years and have struggled to keep up with their own caseloads in a way that is responsive to Southeast community. So yes, absolutely true. Costs are going up. We have to pay for the use of Lemon Creek. And in general, our case numbers are going down. I think that's a good thing. Housing First has done a really good job. Our assaults are going down. There's some other things that we probably could work on more, responding better to larcenies. I know the community really wants us to take a closer look at that. This is really about how much autonomy you want to have for criminal justice response in our community. The state absolutely could do this work. I will take you back to body worn cameras and how that difference in government structure works. Their attorney general would be in charge of criminal prosecution. The governor sets those tasks. Their district attorneys are appointed by the governor and the attorney general, not by you. So for me, that's what the two things, policy things that you have to decide. You have to weigh, absolutely, there is an organization that can take this on. They do a good job. They're good attorneys. They're good people. They care about our community. You will lose autonomy and your ability to respond to crime within Juneau, and you'll have to rely on them. So I think, does that answer kind of the balancing that you're going to have to do?
In an area we can ask staff to bring us more information on as well. Mayor Weldon.
So, Madam Manager, what you said confused me a little bit. So the $935, does that include the public defenders now? And it's just more than that?
That-
And, go ahead.
Yeah, that number does include the increase in public defender contract.
Okay, and then, because I had an and, but she interrupted me. Does that include any of our time that we had to put people in jail? Our jail costs, I should
Yes,
say. Okay,
it does.
thanks.
Other questions, Mr. Brooks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the other side of that, with the model that Anchorage is testing out now, where they are doing the partnership with the state that allows them to prosecute felonies, they're saying that our caseloads are going down. If we did give you the capability to prosecute felonies, would you find yourself at a caseload that you're more used to from previous years, or do you think it'd go beyond that?
So, thank you for the question. So we've been talking with DA Bostic, who is the DA for Southeast Alaska. We've been watching Anchorage's model. We already were discussing how to have my prosecutors partner with hers, because typically for a young prosecutor, you want to go into criminal law, you start with misdemeanors and then you work your way up to felonies. It's a very common progression. And so that will help them be better attorneys. It will help them in their career. So we had already started looking at that potential model. I don't believe that Anchorage, I have also been talking with the city attorney there, Eva Gardner. I don't believe that they're managing the caseloads so that it is not so high that it's unmanageable for attorneys. I think that it would probably not get to the place where our highest caseload numbers were in 2017. I don't think we would get back up that high, but we would probably, right now we're estimated at about 700, 800 cases this year. We probably would get up to about 1,000, which is the norm.
I'll jump in and ask a different question on the table here. I see a variety of items that don't have a cost associated with them, either as operating or one time. For those, I'm assuming it's because we don't know. And, or are there ones here that we could know that we just didn't have time to, or is it all kind of like, we really just can't give a numbers?
You want to take that, Chair? Sorry.
Whoever can answer that question.
I can take that if you want. Where there is not a number listed, we didn't have an estimate in the time to turn these back around to you. And so, yeah, an estimate is unknown. Certainly if the body wants to have us, wants more information pursuing one of these, we can try to get some more information. Many of them that don't have numbers are also ones that we would not expect to see immediate FY27 results on.
Great, thanks. Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is about the Mount Jumbo facility move. That one, we had a whole separate, or we had more information, or we had a memo on that one. We had a lot of information. And this 191 number, that represents what will be the ongoing, but not this year, correct? That goes to what Director Flick, you were just talking about, what will be realized because of the moving costs. So that's represented here to show that that's the ongoing savings we will expect to see. But is that a net neutral for this first year?
The estimated cost for moving is $225,000. So about a net neutral, but I want to point out one caveat, and I mentioned this in the memo. A lot of the savings for building maintenance in moving is really in drive time. And so then there becomes a policy decision. If do we reduce staffing or do we just allocate that time to the never ending list of maintenance needs? So I think I estimated about $60,000 of it was like a hard savings. And then the remainder of it was in those hours.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just as one more point on Assemblymember Hughes Ganji's comments there, you know, if we sell the facility and no longer have that annual operating cost, can you just go into a little more detail how it doesn't necessarily translate into an ongoing savings? Because in my mind, you know, we don't have the budget. I mean, we don't have that building. We don't budget for the overhead cost of it. So that would therefore make it to where, you know, there's more available in other areas, resulting in an operational savings. So if that's not the case, can you just explain how that fund works a little more?
The $60,000 is the savings that would be realized from not operating the building. 130,000 of that number is in savings in hours that employees would not be spending driving. And so that's, again, you only realize that as savings if you reduce your FTEs, and there would just be a policy call of reducing FTEs versus doing more building maintenance. And the way that we charge our building maintenance is we do charge it to all the different, you know, funds. So it's not necessarily general fund expense there. So does that make sense? It's just kind of the very hard savings of not operating that facility is about $60,000.
Any other questions before we jump into a bit of a discussion? Ms. Hall.
Thank you, Chair Wall. And I guess I would want a little more information on the utility rates and the backlog of infrastructure that is all kind of coming to at once, you know, just a deeper dive into our utility infrastructure and how we pay for it, and you know, kicking the can down the road, what that'll do. So anyway, I'd like to have us refreshed on that topic.
Ms. Hall, are you asking for that now, or you think?
Yeah, just when.
Okay, we're going to jump into that conversation here in a sec. So hold that thought. I've got it in my head, but that is a perfect segue into our conversation, which is really where do we need some more information from staff? What I'd suggest is kind of assuming. So we've got this list that is well ordered in terms of the places of agreement. So at the top, we have a lot of assembly grant reductions. I am going to assume that staff cannot necessarily bring us back more information on those. We have heard from our partner agencies. If you all have questions for community grant recipients, you can go and find them. But then we've got a list of things here that have high agreeance that we want, you know, that you all are thinking about it. Mount Jumbo, reduction of pool services, Diamond Park Fieldhouse, City Museum. And so I would say those ones, we should ask staff to bring us back some more information. We know there's some agreement on it. They provided us some information. They can probably summarize what they've provided and provide some color on kind of how we would move forward if we were to choose these paths. So I think those are kind of the easy ones. But maybe I'll ask the manager, well, maybe I'll ask the body on those 4 things: Mount Jumbo, reduction of pool services, Diamond Park Fieldhouse, and City Museum, the type of information you'd like to hear from staff about when they bring us back some more information on those options. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. I see mothball used as a verb for for both of the pools, basically. I guess I would kind of like to understand more about what that might actually mean, because in some of the discussions I had, there was talks about possibly having community partners might take one pool and the public use another or something like that. So does mothball mean like we just close the facility for good, or is there like another picture of how that might actually look like or work?
So in this table, mothball means truly close the facility, not permanently, but we would keep it in warm status. So we would keep it, so that it could be turned back on essentially. And so there would be an expense to that. What Assemblymember Kelly is referring to is a conversation he had with Director Wheeler, where he kind of threw out the idea of maybe we could keep a pool open, but have our clubs and high school and like organized user groups do the staffing, so that we would like do all the work to keep it, to keep the pH levels correct and all of that. I do think that that option would require quite a bit more study, because I have my own questions about how that would truly be a cost saving. So I think if that's something you want Director Wheeler and the team to look into, we certainly can. But I just wanted to provide that context that in this table, mothballing is mothballing per the definition I just used.
Yeah, thank you, Manager Kester. I think that is something I would find useful if the rest of the body would as well.
Mayor Weldon, are you responding to that just because there are other people in line? Okay, Mr. Steininger, then Mayor Weldon.
Actually, my question was the exact same as Mr. Kelly's, because I had similar kind of email traffic on not closing the pool entirely, but looking to those third parties who, have organized groups using Augustus Brown and others using the Valley Pool. So I think I'd add my name to Mr. Kelly's list of wanting a little more information on what that would look like and what a transition plan might look like.
Mayor Weldon.
Mr. Steininger just asked my question.
Ms. Huskindis.
Well, you didn't ask mine. No. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would want to know, I like the way that we've approached this, dividing it. So for me, for the facilities, what I would want to know is your take on FTEs, or how you imagine that would impact those true closures, the FTEs currently associated with them, and then I would like a comparison, if you have anything else to add besides the data we already have, of one pool versus another.
I'll hop on that one and just agree on, for me, the pool discussion, if we choose to reduce pool services, or if we're forced to, I don't think anyone here wants to do this. The kind of trade-offs between closing one versus the other would be good. I'm making an assumption one is more expensive, would be more savings, but also has more capacity and kind of an understand. We have closed a pool before for a year when Augustus Brown was going under renovation. And so I'm guessing there's some understanding of what the I know there were impacts from that. I experienced them myself, but a sense of what the impacts would be for one versus the other. Ms. Atkinson.
Just to add on to that, I know it mentions in here that Diamond Park has more CIP needs than Augustus Brown, but to know exactly what that differential is would be useful.
I'll jump in with one more. The field house, I feel like, is the facility that maybe, at least for myself, maybe for other members, is less clear on kind of what uses. I know there's a lot of different uses at the field house, and I have a sense of what some of them are, but kind of a breakdown of okay, you know, this many hours goes to Turf for Tots versus, you know, rented by the different sports teams and open hours and all that type of thing, kind of, so we can understand who the users are and what the impacts would be to a closure or divestment in some way. Other things on Mount Jumbo, reduction of pool services, Diamond Park Fieldhouse or City Museum that you would specifically want staff to bring you back some more information on? I know they will do a great job of summarizing kind of all the questions we've been asking and give us a real sense of the numbers and the feasibility. But anything else, Mr. Brooks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the City Museum, if we could get information related to the required minimal square footage for operations, that'd be good to know, just to, you know, think about other options for the space, for them to partner with someone else potentially.
Andrew Kessler, it looks like you have a question.
And I think the answer to that would be, it depends on the size of the collections. So is your question? Yeah, I don't think there's like a statutory minimum space requirement for museums. So I think the museum would argue that they need more space than they have now to maintain their current collection. So if you could provide a little more clarity, that'd be helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess it would be more based off of what they deem is a base minimal amount of operating space.
Mr. Steiner?
And this might be a little bit in the weeds, but I'd appreciate a little bit of a, you know, follow up on it. When I worked for the state, I'm working with the State Museum. I know divesting of collection was a very arduous task, and sometimes the terms under which artifacts and things came into the possession of the State Museum, you know, really prevented any divestiture of assets. And I'm curious, you know, for the City Museum, if there's kind of similar strictures, you know, is it even feasible to fully divest of the collection, I guess, is short question. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to keep us rolling. I'm going to not go through that same line by line exploration as for the rest of these. What I'm going to suggest, and this is just a suggestion for you all, but in order to kind of best prioritize staff time, we did this activity knowing that one person might come up with a great idea that the rest of us, think is worth exploring. And so, but I also don't want us to send staff on an exercise to go get information on everything that we might not consider. And so what I'm going to suggest is we actually make some motions here that if you think staff should bring us back some more information on, detailed information on one of these line items, you identify it and you make that motion. And so I might ask Ms. Hall to start because she already basically did this just to model what I think might be a good process if you want to repeat your request as a motion.
Can you remind me, where are we talking about the utility? Okay, so item number 39. See, how would I do a motion about? I guess, yeah, can we get more information on what would be impacted by increasing the utility rates to offset their maintenance, and then they would have their support taken away from the general fund? So I guess I would want more information on that, and I don't know if.
I think that suffices. What I would say, are there any objections to that? Ms. Atkinson?
Just for the purposes of amendment, because I have
perfect.
something I would
Thank
like to add on. would move an amendment to add that staff bring back some scenarios for splitting the 1.9 million between streets project and general funds. Maybe just some levels that would work, like 3 scenarios of splitting that funding and seeing what those would accomplish. And I ask for unanimous consent.
Any objections to that amendment? Any other amendments or objections to staff bringing us back more information on sorry, I missed
If
the
I could
question.
just
Go
ask
ahead.
A quick clarifying question. The utility rate conversation, when you decided to increase rates by 5%, all included $9.4 million of sales tax, general fund, to buy down that rate. It also included a $10 million bond. Are you looking for a scenario where it's like 4.6 million of sales tax and 4.6 million of utility rate increases over 5 years? Various scenarios that kind of split that particular baby?
I probably phrased that poorly. I was looking at we had used a product, money that was set for streets projects. And in this scenario, you had talked about 1.9 million that we would continue to push out streets projects. I was saying that we could reallocate some of that back to streets and some not, and what amount makes sense for each of those pots.
Any objections to the amendment? Ms. Hall, go ahead.
I'm not in favor of this one. So, but I was going to say, if the body is interested in that, I would want, my motion was to get more information on the impact of, the very delicate balance of funding our utilities and the infrastructure needs. So, if the body's not there for wanting to dive into this right now, then I don't know that we need to send staff on a goose chase.
Go ahead, Mr. Steininger.
I was just going to say, I'm in support of getting more information on this. I see it more as a way to kind of reassess our decision on utility rates now that we know that that decision is kind of cannibalizing much needed funding from streets. So kind of like Ms. Atkinson's motion. So I would support this still being saying that we get more information on.
And I know this is a bit of an awkward exercise, but this is the exact discussion I want to have, because if somebody says that's not worth staff time, I think we should say that out loud. This one sounds like there's some support for. So I think we have a amendment that passed. We have a motion that Ms. Hall made as amended to direct staff to bring us some more information. Any objections? Okay, I will take other motions of things that people want more information on. Ms. Atkinson.
On maybe a little smaller of a note, I would move that we get some more information back on a proposal for cat license requirements. And I ask for unanimous consent.
I will ask I saw multiple objections, so Mr. Brooks, do you want to go first?
Yes, I would object for the purpose of an amendment and add that there be either a program or requirement added for pet insurance as well.
Okay, we've got an amendment. We've got some objections. I'll go to Mayor Weldon for her objection first.
I'll object to that because some people can't afford the insurance, so.
Anyone else want to speak to their objection? Ms. Atkinson.
Just a question for Mr. Barr. Do we require pet insurance for dog licenses?
I do not believe that Juneau Animal Rescue, which is the nonprofit organization we contract with for animal control, requires pet insurance for dogs.
Thank you. I maintain my objection.
Anyone else want to speak to objection to the amendment? Ms. Candies, then Ms. Hall.
I will object to the amendment and I'll have one in the chamber for an objection to the motion as well. But for this one, that to me is, that's an interesting thing to think about. It's such a big, it's like a train hitting us where I feel like we have to focus our energy here. Not to say that it doesn't necessarily, very well could have its merits, but for where we need to focus our attention during these big policy decisions, I would say let's not take on new problems to solve. So I would leave that for another time. I object.
Ms. Hall.
And I'll just speak to my objection that we haven't even figured out insurance for we people. So I don't think we need to move to the cats on this. So thank you.
Mr. Brooks.
Just for clarification before I remove my amendment, if it's under the thought that there is a social liability and risk with unleashed dogs and free roaming cats. They go out and will get in a fight with one another, destroy one another, cause exorbitant amount of vet bills for the owners, and no one's liable for any of that. And that happens pretty often around the community. So that was the only place I was coming from. I remove my objection and amendment.
All right, we're coming back to our original motion to ask staff to bring us more information on cat license requirements. Ms. Candies.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll object on this one. I've actually had some good conversations with Mr. Barr, and pet or animal control is a cost that goes up. So this is also like, this may be, this one I actually think perhaps has merit. And then I will say, comma, when you start making policy around animals, this could very well be the time while we're looking for every penny and dime. So if people feel strongly like we're looking for all the pennies and Mr. Barr has thoughts on this and you all have heard them before, then fine if there's 5 of you. I just know that when you get animals involved, and maybe this would be the time because they'd get overpowered by people who don't want their facilities closed, but it just usually bogs down the process. You know, we had a farm license, or like how many chickens could you have in city limits? And it just went nuts. And anytime you bring people's pets into it, it usually just goes nuts. But maybe now is a golden opportunity where we could get it through. So I do want to caveat that and say, I'd be interested if, for instance, if staff thinks this is now the perfect time politically, but otherwise it seems to really slow down the political process.
Mr. Steinegger.
I guess I have hopefully quick question. How much money are we spending on animal control, and how much money are we generating from dog licenses? I'm trying to get an idea of whether this is worth staff time.
Thank you for the question. This is based off of memory from a couple of years ago, but I believe our animal control contract to Juneau Animal Rescue is in the neighborhood of $1.1 million a year right now. I don't know. I do know that it's about an 80-20 split as to like how much of their expenses are related to cats versus how much of their expenses are related to dogs. Cats are far more expensive than dogs. And I don't know how much they collect in dog revenue license fee, because those fees stay with them. They do not come to the city. They use that to offset what they would need to charge a larger contract price to us for, if that makes sense. I can get that number though. It also pretty significantly understated the cost. It's 1.5 million next year.
Ms. Atkinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't disagree with Ms. Candies that this is obviously a hot button issue, but we are talking about closing pools. So I feel like this is going to be a long, bogged down process regardless. And I have heard that 80-20 split number before, and I do think it's something at least worth exploring initially. Certainly, we don't have to go any further than some very one-page memo from Mr. Barr, but I also would point out that I have 3 cats and I'm still interested in looking at this further. So, you know, if
Okay.
anything.
Oh, fair. I'll remove my objection.
Do we have any objection to the motion? Okay, bring us back some more information on that one. Mayor Weldon.
I just have a process question. So if we're not asking questions, are they coming off this list or not yet?
No, my intent is not to take anything off the list. It's just to prioritize staff time. And if there's something here that you really don't like and you don't need more information to not like it, I would say just be quiet for now and there will be an opportunity for you to take it off the list. Mr. Steininger.
I guess then I would like to ask for more information on moving city staff to a 4-day, 36-hour work week.
Objections. Ms. Atkinson.
This is maybe similar to Ms. Huskandy's previous objection. I don't want to spend more staff time on this because I don't think I really support it. But if there are 5 people, then I do think we need to make an educated decision about it. But I have a lot of concerns, so I won't support it.
Mr. Kelly, then Mayor Weldon.
I don't need to speak to my objection.
Mayor Weldon.
I appreciate Mr. Steininger bringing us to this, but I think it's very, very complex. So I think it's more, it would be more staff time than what it's worth. And I think there'd be a lot of staff that would be quite concerned about this.
Any other objections that people want to speak to? Mr. Steininger?
I guess I'll speak kind of to give a little more explanation because I do think it's very complicated and it'll take time to transition. It may not be something that can be transitioned to in fiscal year 27, but I think in order to make a move like this, which would save us enough money to keep open several of the recreational facilities that we're talking about. And if you do your research on 4-day work weeks, it tends to be favorable to the companies that have implemented them and the areas that have implemented them in terms of staff retention and morale and many other things. I think it would benefit us to look into this. And because it's complicated and it will take time, I think we need to get more information before we say no to something that could save us a significant amount of money.
I'll speak to this in objection to this. I appreciate trying to tackle big things that will save money. We don't have a lot of time before we have to make decisions about this year's budget. I think we have had conversation about whether we want to look at reducing services and not doing some things as opposed to doing everything worse. And so to me, this is doing everything worse. And so I will not support us spending more time on it. Anyone else want to speak to this? With that, we have a motion and we have objection. Ms. Wendell, will you call roll?
Thank you, Chair Wall. On the motion that staff bring back more information on moving city staff to a 36-hour work week, which is item number 23 on the list. Assemblymember Steininger.
Yes.
Assemblymember Atkinson.
No.
Assemblymember Kelly.
No.
Assemblymember Hall.
Yes.
Mayor Weldon.
No.
Assemblymember Hughes Candies.
No.
Assemblymember Brooks.
No.
Chair Wall.
No.
Motion fails to a 6 nays.
I will also remind people that you all can do anything you like with 5 members at any time. And so when something fails, it does not mean it can't come up again if there are 5 people if there are people who change their mind. Okay, others. Mr. Brooks.
I'd like to make a motion to have staff bring us back information related to travel and training and the travel and training that is mandatory and required, separated from the elective travel and training.
Objections? Or staff, do you understand this motion? Yes. Objections? Mayor Weldon.
This is the maker of the motion. Much of our training, especially with police and fire, are grant funded, so it doesn't really apply to them. Are we looking at applying to them for those also?
Not necessarily, is it all grant funding or partial? Like,
There is grant funding for a lot of our travel and training. It's certainly not the majority of it. I think I'd highlighted in my memo that the travel and training information that you had got for the Saturday retreat included non-general fund. So if you were to take it, the savings to general fund of a reduction like that, or I'm sorry, the impact to general fund of the reduction, the higher end reduction in there would just have a much greater impact on general fund departments because of that breakdown. I'm happy to bring you back information that's like what's general fund, what's grant funded, what's mandatory. That seems doable.
all of them. Maybe your prioritization in view of it, because I understand that, fire and police, we want to make sure that they go and get all the travel and training that they need to be able to keep our communities safe. But, fire's proposed travel budget is lower than engineering and public works. So just the things that aren't necessarily required for health and safety of the community, what do you prioritize the type of travel and training at on the other types of departments?
Any objections? Ms. Atkinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just don't really want to spend staff on this. I don't want to see it move forward. I think that when you take out things like grants, probably the biggest savings you'd have in reducing travel and training would be in personnel lapse, because we would have people leave the city more if they do not have training opportunities and professional development opportunities, especially in a lot of our job classes where the private sector pays significantly more. I think it's important to have those additional benefits, and this is relatively low cost. So I would support moving forward with this.
I'll speak in favor of this, not because I think it's likely that I'll support cuts here, but because I feel like we'll keep getting questions on this, and the staff have provided some good information on it. We have reduced this already. And so one more kind of way of summarizing it so that we all are clear on what we have cut, what we haven't cut, what we could cut, I think would be helpful. But it seems unlikely that I will support this as a cost-saving measure, given what Ms. Atkinson said. All right, we have a motion and we have objection. Ms. Wendell, will you call roll?
Thank you, Chair Wall. On the motion that staff bring back information regarding travel and training, specifically travel and training that is mandatory and required, separated from elective travel and training. Assemblymember Brooks.
Yes.
Assemblymember Atkinson.
No.
Assemblymember Kelly.
Yes.
Assemblymember Steininger.
Yes.
Mayor Walden.
Yes.
Assemblymember Hughes Scandies.
Yes.
Assemblymember Hall.
Yes.
Chair Wall.
Yes.
Motion passes 7 ayes, 1 nay.
I got a motion if others don't have any more.
I pick that up. Ms. Wall.
I would move to direct staff to bring us back more information on transferring prosecution back to the state. We got to ask some questions today. They gave me some more information on this. I would like to really understand kind of what, I don't have a full sense of what these misdemeanors are and what might change as a result of this. And so having the law department provide us a detailed summary of what we expect the true impact in our community to be if we were to make this change would be helpful to me.
Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Assembly Member Hughes Ganges. It would be an objection for the purpose of an amendment to add that it just be a little more comprehensive for if what it would look like to give that responsibility back to the state, in addition to seeing, what it would also look like if we took on more of the felony side of things, like, what the implication of both sides would be.
Ms. Well. Response to that.
Just a question for the maker of the motion. Would you see cost savings in that case? Because I think in terms of my priorities right now, if it's not something that we would see cost savings, then it's not a priority.
Mr. Brooks, do you want to clarify that?
Yes, it wouldn't have on base running cost savings, but the implementation for, how crime and health and safety in the community is, it's just hard to say.
Okay, we have a motion. We have an amendment proposed that would sort of negate well, not negate the motion, but we've heard from the maker of the motion. There's a Robert's rule here that I'm like, oh, it can't be opposite, but I'm getting funny looks, so maybe that's just on me. All right, so do we have?
I
Is
objected,
that
if
an
that's-
objection?
if
Yeah,
that's not
thank
clear.
you.
I objected.
That is what I was looking for. Okay, so we have an amendment and we have an objection to the amendment. Is there anything on the amendment? Mr. Steiniger?
So we're commenting on the amendment to the motion.
Yep. Only that.
Yeah, I'll share an objection as well. I just don't think it's worth spending staff time looking into ways to increase cost and increase responsibility to the city at this time. Very well could be a good idea. I just don't think that with the exercise that we're going through right now, it necessarily is productive to spend staff time on that.
Great. Mayor Weldon?
I object. I don't need to speak to it.
Great. Mr. Brooks, wrap up on that?
I'll remove my amendment.
Okay.
Okay.
So now we are back to the main motion. Ms. Atkinson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand it's a complicated issue and I understand wanting more information on it. I do think it takes up a lot of staff time for something I can't support. I know I've seen a lot of supplemental requests recently for the criminal division of the Department of Law. They are not doing particularly well, and I think there is concern in other communities that don't have our control over criminal cases. And so that would concern me. And I don't want to put us in a position where we take a public safety issue, which is ranked very high on the survey of citizens, and we start getting emails of JPD arrested someone and the state will not prosecute. And especially if that's a case that we probably would have if it were still under the city. And we just see so many places where the state doesn't take good care of our city and does not have the funds to take good care of our city. I don't want to voluntarily hand over another thing that's very important. So I'll maintain my objection.
Mayor Weldon?
Thank you. Ms. Atkinson spoke to all of it, other than the fact I'll add that we have had felony cases that the state hasn't prosecuted that we wanted prosecuted. So I don't think putting misdemeanors on their plate's a wise idea.
Mr. Kelly?
Thank you. I think in light of Ms. Atkinson and the mayor's comments, I think I would be interested in also I don't think I need to make this an amendment, but if this does pass, I would be interested in seeing what the state's track record is and how that might affect prosecutions in Juneau.
Right. Not seeing anything else, no one else who wants to speak, I will say that I would support this. I agree, there is a huge policy call here, and that is, I think, Ms. Wright bringing up the body worn cameras is that's a recent one in our mind where we know where autonomy matters. So this is not a decision that I would flippantly want to turn back to them, but I would like a deeper understanding so that if I'm a no with conviction, then I know we don't have to think about it. But it could be one of those services that, we heard lots of letters from people saying, don't close anything. So looking at other options. All right, so we have objection, we have a motion. Ms. Wendell, please call roll.
Thank you. On the motion that staff bring back more information on transferring prosecution back to the state, specifically information regarding what the true impact of this change on the community would be. Assemblymember Wall,
Yes.
Assemblymember Atkinson,
No.
Mayor Weldon,
No.
Assemblymember Kelly,
Yes.
Assemblymember Brooks,
No.
Assemblymember Hall,
No.
Assemblymember Steininger,
Yes.
Chair Hughes Candies.
Yes.
Motion fails, 4 ayes, 4 nays.
Give the gavel back.
Anything else that we would like some dedicated time from staff on before we revisit this conversation? Mayor Weldon.
Thank you. I would like more information on item number 32 from the staff to see if the 0.5 FTE of administrative support could be taken over by the admin staff that we currently have.
I'll object for a question. Can you rephrase that? Or yes, please rephrase
Could I
that.
get more information on the elimination of the 0.5 FTE of administrative support at the clerk's office to see if it could be covered somehow else? I don't know how else. What would the elimination do? Just
That's a better way to phrase it, I think. Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I wanted to double check with staff. On item 22, we have a memo, is that correct, on this one?
Oh, we still are on the motion that Mayor Weldon made.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Bad. Guys, I can see time. I've had way too much caffeine.
Any objection to the mayor's motion? Seeing none, that's so moved. Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thanks, Madam Chair. My question is, I have a question for Manager Custer, which is, do we have a memo that we were given previously on item 22?
Thank you. You do have a memo that is pretty holistically talking about what Parks and Landscape does. It's a very detailed memo that, goes into detail about their budget and their FTEs and the services that they provide. What you don't have is like what specific services would be reduced under specific dollar amount scenarios. I think you could say you have enough information to make those decisions in that memo, but just wanted to clarify that it's not like specific to a dollar amount.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Hall.
Are we ready for a new one? Yeah, okay. I move that we direct staff to check in with Bartlett about the impact of eliminating the $200,000 subsidy. I know that came into place when they were, really struggling. And, I guess the question is that still necessary, or so a little more information on that.
Any objections? Seeing none, that's so moved. Ms. Atkinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just move that we get a little more information on item number 20, which is the implementation of a 340B pharmaceutical program. What that would look like and what the potential benefits are. I'm realizing that's probably complex, but if we can kind of get a realm of that, that'd be helpful. And ask for unanimous consent.
Any objections? Seeing none, that's so moved. All right, anything else? Mayor Weldon, then Ms. Hughes Candies.
Okay, before I do mine, just again, the process question. If we don't bring things up, they're not coming off this list tonight, correct? Just making sure.
Nothing is coming off this list tonight, only because some of us would like more information before we have those votes. So you can ask questions. You
Okay.
can direct staff to bring us back information on anything here that you would want them to spend time on.
Okay, this was my crazy idea. Number 40 was to lease the Douglas Fire Station. And the reason I was thinking of that is it's hardly used. It's got very old apparatus in it. There's not hardly any Douglas volunteers left. And then it has living quarters and bays, and I think it would be a good place for people to lease, and I think we'd make good revenue from it. So I would ask staff to bring us more information on that.
I'll object for a question of staff. What would be involved? What would you be able to provide us in the time frame, that we're under, if the idea is that we'd be able to use it to make budget decisions, what would you be able to provide us?
Thank you, Chair Wall. We could certainly have some more conversations with the department about impacts that the department might see. I think we could give you some guesses on lease revenue, but they would only be guesses at this point in the amount of time that we have before next Wednesday.
That's helpful. Any objections? Mr. Kelly?
Yes, I think I would object because that would put the city back in a position of being a landlord, and it's yeah, I think I'll just leave it there. So I'm not interested in. We've already given staff a lot to do. I'm not likely to support this, and so I would object to having staff look more into it.
Thanks. Any other objections or people want to speak? All right, Ms. Wendell, we have a motion and we have objection. Will you call roll?
Thank you, Chair Wall. On the motion for staff to bring back information on item number 40, leasing the Douglas Fire Station. Mayor Walden.
Yes.
Assemblymember Kelly.
No.
Assemblymember Hall.
Yes.
Assemblymember Atkinson.
Yes.
Assemblymember Hughes Candies.
Yes.
Assemblymember Brooks.
Yes.
Assemblymember Steininger.
Yes.
Chair Wall.
No.
Motion passes 6 ayes, 2 nays.
Anything else? Ms. Hall?
This is rather small potatoes, but item 14, would we be able to find out if they would be able to charge commercial user groups at the Arboretum? I know it's got to be free to the public, but I don't know if commercial user groups would fall under that. I'd feel less bad about cutting their revenue if I knew they could recoup with commercial groups.
Is that a question you all can answer right now, or is it something you need to?
Yes, I did look into that.
Okay,
and they-
might as well
they-
answer it.
They could, if you recall, the Arboretum cannot charge a fee for entrance. We could include them in our commercial use permit and charge a permit for the commercial use of that. Whether or not that would be, successful or any of that is not, not something that I could speak to, but there is, that could be, is legally doable.
Okay, well, with that, I won't have you do any more digging into that. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. We're gonna call it good on that topic for the night. We will be starting to actually, I think we will bring back more information for you all, and then we're gonna start prioritizing some of these things. You know, I expect these are gonna be big, hard decisions, and I expect we won't be making them until the very end of this process. And so this will be a little iterative, but I do think for the benefit of the public and for staff and ourselves, we will have to start winnowing the list to what we're, you know, actually talking about. So more on that. All right, that brings us to empowered board follow-ups. We have a memo from Ms. Flick. Ms. Flick, do you have anything on this topic?
Certainly. So, just wanted to take this moment in the process to recognize that, that the manager's proposed budget includes the budgets that the various empowered boards, approved for their departments that they're responsible for. We typically would have reviewed these at our all-day Saturday retreat. But given how we wanted to approach this year and reallocate some time, you saw many of those budgets earlier on through joint meetings in this process. So I just wanted to make everybody aware that if the body does nothing at all, takes no action other than moves the manager's proposed budget forward to the full assembly, those empowered board budgets will be included as you see them today, as their respective boards approve them. We know that next week we intend to spend some time talking about Eagle Crest. And so, you know, that's definitely an open topic. You just requested some additional information on a line item within Bartlett. You may decide to address that through the budget reduction process that you're working on today. But we just wanted to make sure you had a moment to pause if there was anything that you wanted specifically to address within those empowered board budgets, whether it be questions or things that you specifically want to put on a pending list for a decision later, but recognizing that you're not required to do any specific action as those budgets are already included in the manager's proposed budget.
All right, so I think the question is there anyone who still has things that they'd like to talk about related to our empowered boards besides the things Ms. Flick just mentioned, Eagle Crest and a few line items for Bartlett? Because it would be good to know from the body if that's just going to kind of sail through the process as is. Ms. Hughes-Candies.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'm trying to think about how to answer this in a way that's most helpful, knowing what we did this year and my memory of those budgets. I would say I do expect those to sail through, but you also noted that we will be making some, you know, it's that balance of trying to winnow down our list, and also nobody wants to put anything back on the shelf until they've put everything back on their shelf. So this is just, are you trying right now to lock this, or are you just, is this just a sense of the body?
Good question. I think the reality is, again, any one of these members can make a motion at any time. And so, you know, it's totally in order. We go through a bunch of budget decisions on our last day and somebody decides to make a change to an empowered board, you can do that. But if there's a topic that you think this body should talk about before we get there, other than the ones that we just discussed, it would be good to know. But it doesn't prevent you from making a motion at any time to change any of those budgets. Ms. Hall.
Yeah, I would like to know a little bit more about what the school district's BSA, what their budget was sort of built on, the assumption of what the BSA would be. And, I know the legislature, they're not done with their work. So I guess if that's going to change substantially, would we be able to get a little more clarity on what to expect, and maybe they wouldn't need as much from the city? So,
Maybe I'll ask staff what that would entail to get that information.
Chair Wall, I believe that would involve us reaching out to Superintendent Hauser and the Chief Financial Officer at the school district and asking the question of what the assumption was on. Unfortunately, I didn't attend that joint meeting with the BOE. I'm not sure if that information was already included in the packet from that meeting.
Okay, that sounds like information we can get back to the body before we make votes. Ms. Atkinson?
Maybe I'm just not following the question. If the question is, do we think the legislature will bump the BSA up enough that they need less city support at the school district? I could tell you, I think the answer is probably no. So I guess I'm not sure what exactly you're asking. Sorry.
yeah, I guess I would be curious about one-time funding if we think that's going to happen this session.
All right, so maybe live updates from what we know about school district funding as we go would be helpful. Mayor Weldon?
Thank you. I don't know if this would be helpful to the assembly or not. So if it's not, I can just remove the motion, but I would move the docks and harbors and airport board budgets at this time.
Any objections? Mr. Kelly?
Thanks. I just, what do you mean by you would move them?
That means we'll accept them into the budget as presented.
I'll remove my objection.
That is helpful, Mayor Weldon. Thank you. All right. Let's take a 10-minute break before we jump into, oh, sorry, did I not? I saw no objections, but I didn't necessarily say that out loud. Any objections? Seeing none, that's so moved. And let's take a 10-minute break before we go into the foregone revenue conversation. I'll bring us back to order. This brings us to agenda topic 3, foregone revenue. Who is taking this? Because it looks like the memo is from 3 of our assembly members. Mr. Steininger, would you like to speak to the memo?
Well, I assume everybody has read the memo then? Then we're good. No, we organized it. So you've got 2 memos in your packet. One is from October 30th. That's a memo from Director Flick that has all 47 identified areas of foregone revenue. You'll notice the revenue or the memo dated April 20th from the team, foregone revenue team, has a lot less. So we culled out things that we just didn't think were really worth spending too much more time on as an assembly for a variety of different reasons for each one. But absolutely, we're not saying that there's no reason to discuss them at all, just that, we kind of felt like through our discussions that, probably juice isn't worth the squeeze. But feel free to bring any of those back because they do have, we got some interesting information from the finance director on a handful of them, in order to get to that conclusion. So there's a lot of data and a lot of information that Ms. Flick has brought to us that is out there if you're interested in it. And then we sorted them into, I guess, 3 categories. Things where we're recommending action. We may not have a specific action on every one, but some of them we believe that we should take action on. We're just not totally clear on exactly what that action should be. One that really is just more needs a policy discussion. We're not sure if we should take action, but we should probably talk about it and kind of make everyone aware of kind of all the information about a certain exemption. And then a couple, 2 new revenue options to discuss that aren't necessarily things that were included on Director Flick's memo, but things that we thought we should bring to the body. So I don't know if Chair Wall, if you're interested in kind of working through these one by one, or kind of how you wanted to sort of format this discussion.
I don't have a preference. Maybe my question back to the committee is, do you have things to say about each one, or should we just open up to the body for questions? Let's just go for questions and people can dig in where they want to. Mr. Kelly, assuming you have a question.
I do. I have a couple. I'll start with one. I guess one of them, the property tax on commercial vessels. I see most of the others have some sort of dollar amount here that is suggesting that we might save from that. But I don't see that on property tax on commercial vessels. So I'm wondering how much revenue we're missing out. We're foregoing on that item.
Director Flick, do you have order of magnitude on that one?
Honestly, Chair Wolf, thank you for the question, Mr. Kelly. I don't know that we have a good order of magnitude on that. We just don't really have a good handle on the population scope of what that is. So, unfortunately, I don't have a rough order of magnitude that I can share.
And I assume that would be the case with the few other ones here without dollar amounts, that maybe it's a question of it's because we can't know that answer, as opposed to with more research, we could know the answer. We just don't have information available to make a good estimate. Is that fair?
I think on some of those, especially where we're talking about changing an exemption that already exists, the way that we get information, particularly on sales tax, we'll get a total amount of sales and a total amount that was exempted, but we won't necessarily know that was the number of transactions. So we can't necessarily estimate, oh, if we make a change in the exemption, we don't have the data to calculate what that would necessarily be.
Other questions? Ms. Hall?
I guess on that one, well, probably several of these, what do other communities do? And then another question would be, on the property tax on commercial vessels. And then the other one would be, how would we go about assessing the value of those?
Ms. Flick?
Thank you for the question. For it was sort of a broad question, Ms. Hall. We did look at where we had information on other communities and made comparisons. I think it's fair to say that none of the changes here are out of context for what other communities are doing. In fact, like on the commercial vessels, we know that there are some other communities that do have property tax on those. So, I mean, I don't have them laid out right here where I could say these communities did this one or that one. But we did look at, how other communities treated many of these exemptions and taxes.
And on the, how would you assess property tax on commercial vessels question? Like, how would you assess the value? Do you have a answer to that question?
I might need to use a lifeline to Ms. Wright if she has those notes in front of us. I think there are some that are based on length of the vessel. There are some that are actually bullet number 2. Using something similar to aircraft, which has something that's very objective. And so vessel length would be something very typical for commercial vessels for assessing a value associated or a tax associated with the length of the vessel.
Ms. Atkinson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question on the retail sales by nonprofits and governments. One of the recommendations was that nonprofit secondhand stores be allowed to apply for a biannual exemption that evaluates the public purpose of their retail activity. Would that be similar to how we do with nonprofits and their property taxes, I believe is the one we do? And with the inclusion of this, is there any concern about like staff capacity? I'm sure it's a pretty small addition, but I just wanted to double check.
Thank you for that question. When we were looking at the nonprofit secondhand thrift stores specifically, it is a very small population. And we wanted to ensure that there was some sort of a process to ensure that the nature of those organizations or those stores don't change over time out of that kind of public purpose arena. We also know that there are secondhand stores that are private. And so just wanting to make sure that where there's this exemption in place, it really is meeting that public purpose. And to your question about, being onerous on staff, one of the things that was suggested was making it a biannual process so that a thrift store, I'm thinking of like St. Vincent's, doesn't have to come every year to say, yep, we're still a nonprofit, we're still meeting this public purpose. But every couple of years with a small population is something that we could reasonably handle within staff. And you are correct. So with property taxes and nonprofits, they do have to apply every year and show how they're using that property, but the property is valued every year as well. So that annual process makes sense with how property valuation works.
Thank you. I was reading that as twice a year, so that makes a lot more sense.
Yes.
I'll jump in with a question on that one. I mean, I probably have an opinion on this, but I'll see what how your answer is. You know, sorry, that came off wrong. I just meant I'm curious about the definition of selling items or services as a business venture versus fundraising purposes. I think that is very, if not impossible. I don't think that's possible to tell the difference, but I'm curious how you would expect to define those, or if we define it already, how the difference is defined.
Thank you for that question. I'm going to assume that these are coming to me unless one of the committee members wants to jump in on them. We have some good examples from neighboring states about kind of defining more of a storefront sale. So if you are operating a nonprofit and you are selling goods or services that are available to the public, like anybody could access them, kind of as a storefront, you're in that business. Those sales would be required. You would be required to collect and remit sales tax from those customers who are purchasing from a nonprofit or a government, just like they would purchase from a private vendor. I think that's different from one-off events or raffle tickets. So if you think of a nonprofit's going to sell calendars as a fundraiser, they do it once a year. They're not selling it. They haven't set up shop, as you will. They don't have a storefront where someone comes in to buy the calendar once a year. Those would be considered more of that one-off event for fundraising. So I think we've got some good examples of other areas. Washington State has some great definitions that we would lean on.
Other questions? Ms. Hall?
So on that one, I had a suggestion from a constituent, and I'm wondering if this is even legal. He said, could it be optional for the nonprofit with the revenue then directed to, say, youth programming or youth programs? So
thank you for the question, Ms. Hall. No, we would not have an opportunity to have certain nonprofits collect sales tax with a designated place for it to go. If the body wanted to create a particular kind of tax that funded something, which we could have a discussion about dedicated tax and the great ideas and also the difficulties and challenges with that. But that would have to be like a completely separate tax that's established to accomplish something. So it would not be doable in this particular scenario.
Mr. Brooks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the first two for recommended action, property tax on commercial fixed wing and then property tax on commercial vessels. I'm not a fan of any new taxes being created, but could you give us a little more information on the cost associated with implementing that? And it sounds like assessments will need to go out and there will be some staff time. Like, is there just like a rough idea what it takes to implement a new tax as opposed to removing an exemption?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Brooks. On the first item, the property tax on commercial fixed wing and rotary wing aircraft, that already exists. So that is not a new tax, but they are fixed tax amounts based on the attribute of, so like the weight of the aircraft. And that just is a flat tax that hasn't been adjusted in 15 years. So the recommendation here is just to adjust it for CPI and to do that perhaps in a phased approach. So there's not a sticker shock of 15 years of catch up of CPI. On the commercial vessels, that would be creating a new tax, and we certainly would need to work through what it would take to establish that. That's not an arena in which we currently collect specific information. And so, I would imagine there would be a bit of work setting that up and getting it established. But once it's established, I don't see that would be a large increase of effort by our assessment group.
Other questions? All right. Madam Mayor, do you have ideas on how we move this conversation forward?
Sure, of course I do. Well, the recommend for action, I would assume that we would bring ordinances forward, and there's a couple decisions we would have to make, and we would just probably put an either or in the ordinances. The policy discussion needed prior to action, I think we do need to talk about that, whether we talk about it tonight, since we're just getting it, or at another date. And then the new revenue options to discuss. I think they're both good ideas. However, I don't know that they can be implemented between now and FY '27. So it was a very short amount of time. So that might be a future, but I'm looking at my two members of the assembly of my group that see if they think we could get the new revenue options out there before FY '27 starts. Or for FY '27.
I think the business licenses, that sounds like a slower moving process. And I am looking on the screen to Ms. Flick to make sure that this is, we think these are ideas worth following up on, but the body should continue pursuing them and looking at that, but you're right, we're not going to recognize that value right away. And then the local registration requirements, that to me felt more, I guess, shorter term, but I would agree that neither one of those was turnaround savings.
And just, Madam Chair, if you would, sorry, I didn't probably say that. I agree totally with Ms. Hughes County's. I think those are ordinances that need to come forward. I just don't know that they will come forward while we're going through our budget. Does that make more sense? Probably.
Mr. Steininger?
Yeah, just going to add on to the things that will actually be able to make it in FY '27. There are a number of these that, as we talked with Director Flick, we wouldn't want to, for, not just timing reasons, but policy reasons, be effective on July 1st. Like if it's a property tax related thing, that's not going to fully come into, get fully spun up by the start of the fiscal year. So some of this just by necessity has delay to it as well, to the point of some of these may take a while.
Madam Mayor?
So between now and the time we do an ordinance, I'm looking at going back to the single goods, single service sales tax dollar cap. And I just wanted to point the body to, there's three kind of questions there. Recommend to completely remove the exemption or raising the cap, discuss keeping the exemption for building construction contractors, and recommend a further discussion of motor vehicles. I'm not asking for anything tonight, but they should go out and reach out to some folks and, or have folks reach out to them and say, how would this affect us? So.
Maybe, would you define make a motion for the recommended for action, just to, you basically said it, but are we
Okay.
bringing those ordinances back to committee, I
Yes.
assume?
I move that we bring, well, technically I don't have to make movement to bring ordinances forward, but I will. I move that we bring back ordinances for the items under recommended for action to the Finance Committee.
Any objections? I'm gonna object for an amendment, which you guys probably won't support, but I'll do it as a way of,
Ms. Wall, you have an amendment.
I would like to eliminate retail sales by nonprofits and governments from that list. I think there's lots of reasons for that. I don't think it serves our goals. But I also think it's bad policy to kind of single out nonprofits that have a storefront. I'm not really sure why they would be, other nonprofits would be exempt. Nonprofits make their revenue, they fundraise in lots of different ways. Some sell cookies in a very sophisticated way, not in a storefront for 6 months. Some do, as you guys have pulled out some exemptions here that you think shouldn't be, but I don't know that there's a clear argument for why those shouldn't be versus ones with a storefront. So I just think it's a really tricky policy conversation to have. I'm not sure it's worth our time right now. And I would highly doubt I would support it down the road. So this is me pulling it off the list.
Okay, so we have an amendment to remove that one from the ordinances that will be coming back. I will object to that amendment if no one else does, but objections, Ms. Mayor Weldon.
Thank you. I appreciate Ms. Wall's objection tonight, but again, I think this is a time when we bring the ordinance forward and then discuss it rather than try and squash it tonight. Several members of the public have asked us to look into this for years.
And I saw your hand, Mr. Kelly, are you good?
I'm good. I would pretty much say what the mayor just said.
Okay. And Mr. Steininger, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I guess I'll object, but I also really would like to see more discussion on how we define that storefront versus not, because, you know, as the maker of the motion pointed out, that a physical storefront is not necessarily the defining characteristic. And I think we do need to make sure we're caring for this and figuring out. I'd love to see more information on the other states' laws and see how it's cared for. I want to make clear, I don't want to, I get the intent of your motion, and I want to make it clear that I agree with the intent of your motion, but I think we need to keep moving down the road.
Great. And I would not belabor the point, but I would second what those two said. That's a good policy conversation to have, but with all of these, I will be looking to make a bigger circle of people who are included, not a smaller circle, so. But that'll be a good one. Okay, we have an amendment. We have objection. Ms. Wendell, please call roll.
Thank you, Chair Hughes-Scandies. On the amendment to eliminate retail sales by nonprofits and governments from the list for consideration. Assemblymember Wall,
Yes.
Mayor Weldon,
No.
Assemblymember Kelly,
No.
Assemblymember Hall,
No.
Assemblymember Atkinson,
No.
Assemblymember Brooks,
No.
Assemblymember Seininger,
No.
Chair Hughes-Scandies.
No.
Amendment fails, 1A, 7 nays.
Okay, that brings us back to the main motion, but I'll pass the gavel back.
All right, that brings us back to the motion to draft, direct staff to draft ordinance for each of these and bring them back. Ms. Wright.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? Since there are 8 ordinances that you may be asking me to draft, do you have a date in mind?
In time that we can do them before we finish our budget.
We have a finance committee check-in meeting tomorrow morning, and so we will look at the schedule and talk about what's realistic from our in terms of coming back and talking about this. Okay, so remind me so I think the question was, do we want to talk about these other items tonight? I think you guys want kind of feedback on where the body is at on these ones. Is that what I heard?
Yep, exactly that. I think we needed feedback to decide if we wanted to consider moving forward with this one, because it is some policy decision. So eventually we would direct ordinance if the body was willing to do it, but we wanted to, there's bullet points that we needed to hear from the body.
Comments, and this can come from committee members as well. Ms. Atkinson.
Actually, I'm sorry. Did we pass the previous motion? We did? Okay, we did? Okay, thank you. Sorry, my bad.
It is possible I am doing it with my eyes, and so you don't, yeah, please let me know if I have skipped a step. Comments from members of the body about whether they would like us to tackle these 3 items and their comfort in addressing them. Mayor Weldon.
I'm going to focus the question. The biggest thing was, do we want to look at a new income level for seniors rather than what it is right now? Because between the 3 of us, we thought that the income level was pretty high, so it wasn't a true hardship. So with that being said, if it's easier for the body for us to come back with a motion, or ordinance that the 3 of us kind of agree on the income, if that's easier for you guys to look at, and then you can amend on the side, we could certainly do that.
Ms. Atkinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I like Mayor's approach. I think that if we're looking about whether the body is open to discussing the concept, absolutely. I think that if we try to make all these decisions as a body right now, or in the future, it's very sticky quickly. If we have a proposal in front of us, I think that would be a good starting point, but I am definitely open to discussing this further.
Anyone not open to discussing? Cool. Go ahead, Mayor Weldon.
So I'll make a motion to bring back a ordinance on senior hardship exemptions and ask for unanimous consent.
Any objections? And I guess you can leave blanks in that ordinance.
Seeing none, that motion passes.
Seeing none, that motion passes. And these other 2, what feedback did you want?
I would move that we bring ordinances back for these, but probably outside of our budget season is all. So I'm looking at my committee members. Was that what we were looking for? You can amend.
Mr. Steininger.
So add maybe an amendment to the motion regarding the business licenses is to ask staff to see if there's possibility of coordinating with the state business license entity to see if that could reduce a burden or if that would generate additional burden. I'm not quite sure, but I wanted to put that out there as well.
Okay, apologize to the public, but when we can't meet as a body, this is what we have to do. So I'm looking at my committee members. Do we just want more information on these 2 first before we ask for amendment, or do we want to ask for amendment? An ordinance, sorry. Guess all of us are having trouble with English language tonight.
I'm okay asking for ordinance, I guess, to answer your question.
Ms. Candies?
Thanks, Mayor Weldon. It would be helpful if I could ask Director Flick a question right now. Director Flick, I felt like where we left off with these, we had already started kind of talking through some of this is the need to figure out how we would operationalize that. And my sense was one was further along than the other, but these are both, and I don't know, like span, passing our budget, certainly, but I don't know how, could you try to provide some frame of reference? Like, do you think this is something that gets done by the end of the year? Because I think that would help me know whether we need to throw steam in the train or.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think these 2 items might be appropriate to have staff work on some implementing ideas and bring that back to the body as a committee. And we can talk about some of those implementation costs, process, things that might need to be done. If there's an appetite from the body to consider either or both of these as potential new programs and revenue sources. And I think with that implementation information, the body might be in a better position to direct for the appropriate ordinance or action from there.
Thank
But
you for that.
To answer your question, I don't think that either of these would have an immediate impact on FY27. I think they would take some time to get going, and we could potentially see if we decide to move forward with them, probably for FY28, you could see the impact of them.
Okay, thank you, Director Fleck. Then I would say to the other two committee members, I am satisfied with getting that information that Director Fleck said. And I would just say to the whole body that our feeling, given the information we had, was pursue these. And then if new information changes, but our recommendation is to pursue these revenue.
Was there a motion on the floor to do that? What's the amendment?
There was a motion on the floor to have ordinances brought forward.
And was that amended to just have information? Or was that what?
Madam Chair, I'll withdraw my motion and we'll let Mr. Steininger make one.
He also looks clear on what we're doing.
As we move to instruct staff to bring back additional information on these two new revenue options.
To the finance committee after the
finance
budget
committee.
process.
And ask for unanimous consent.
Any objections? Seeing none, that's so moved. Thank you guys for all your work in bringing us back a list of things that are worthy of consideration. And staff for all the work they did to help the committee get ready for this. Mayor Weldon.
All we did was ask questions. It's Director Flick and Ms. Wendell and their staff that did all the work.
Okay, that brings us to the 3% temporary sales tax renewal agenda topic. Manager Kester, is this you? Or Director Flick?
I can take it if you want.
ahead.
Previously, we asked the body if you wanted to have an ordinance drafted to put on the ballot in October a renewal of the 3% sales tax, and your answer was yes. And so in the packet tonight, I believe it's on page 3, is a draft ordinance. Thank you, Attorney Wright, for drafting this for us. It is, I'm sure, more complex than this, but it's kind of a find and replace dates from the last one that was passed. It has all the same intent language on how the 3% is split as we did back in that we have currently, and you'll see those side by side. And so that is what is in your packet for the body to discuss tonight and take action if desired.
Questions from the body? Mayor Weldon.
Thank you. I move ordinance 2026-13 to the full assembly. And just briefly speak to it. If you played the token game, this was 12 tokens or a third of our operating budget.
Thank you, Mayor Weldon. Ms. Euskandis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The meat and potatoes of this, I think, is the 111 language. I was just curious because it's got the Better Capital City account and youth activities, which I don't know what the Better Capital City account, if you ask me off the top of my head, I would not know. The general public, other general public services versus general government services, is there a reason, general public services, does that feel like a more accurate representation than general government services? I'm looking at the bottom 1%. And if it's that, this is what we use now, but
So the intent, sorry, I wasn't tracking
Yeah.
where you were. The intent was just to make it more simple and to clarify the types of places it's going to go. It's purely for simplification processes.
okay. Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Madam Mayor, do you have a motion? My God, I'm losing my mind. Can you remind me what your motion was? Because somehow I missed it.
My motion was to move ordinance 2026-13 to the full assembly.
Follow-up question for the maker of the motion. I'm curious about timing for, so normally that would lead to it being introduced and then set for public hearing at the next meeting. Maybe staff can let us know what the date is, only because I don't know if there's any reason we would want to wait to officially put this on the ballot until we're a little closer to the deadline. So maybe staff could tell me when this would be up for public hearing and when the last date for us putting it on the ballot would be. That's my question.
I specifically didn't put a date so we could move it as needed, just so you know. That's why I didn't say at the next regular assembly meeting. I just said move it to the assembly, since I control the agenda.
Okay.
But we can ask staff those dates.
Yeah.
I see that Ms. Wendell has the assembly calendar pulled up. I know the next meeting is May 18th. I do believe we have till about the end of July to pass something to put it on the ballot. So that's kind of our hard stop when we want to have all of those like bond and ballot questions by. And Ms. Wendell, if you want to give those dates.
There are 3 regular assembly meetings scheduled for between May, June, and July. We have May 18th, June 8th, and July 27th.
So the mayor's motion will allow the mayor to decide when that gets set for public hearing. And in theory, when it gets introduced, we could change that date if we wanted. So maybe we can think about it. I don't have an opinion at this point, except to say a lot might change between now and then. And so my instinct right now is to wait, but we can decide that at a later date. So I'll remove my objection. Any other objections to the motion? Seeing none, that is so moved. That brings us to updated AFC budget calendar. Director Flick, is there anything you wanted to highlight for us?
Thank you, Chair Wall. I don't know specifically if there's anything that we wanted to highlight other than the fact that we added so next week, I guess, as just a point of order, it's a normal AFC meeting night, but we'll start with a special assembly meeting where we'll have public hearing on our budget items, and you'll have an action for motion to establish the local funding level for the school district to meet the timeline requirements of that. And then moving into the AFC at 6 p.m. or once the special meeting concludes, we did add service reduction follow-up as a part of the conversation for more information sharing. We also added it on May 6th. So we just, acknowledge that this is going to be an iterative and ongoing conversation. And I believe that this was already on the calendar, but on May 13th, after the adoption of the budget items, which is really moving it to the full assembly, we did add bonds just to ensure that everybody knew that had a placeholder, and we would tackle that once the budget decisions are over and the budget's been moved to the assembly for action. I think that's all that we needed to point out on the calendar.
Any questions? All right. With that, we are adjourned.